while the other group members watch, talk among themselves, socialize, engage in social media, eat and drink. That has been the secret sauce.
Hi, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories. Hey, gang, we are a great episode that we've got for you today. I'm super excited to bring our guest on. It is none other than Mr. Bart Berger of Qubica AMF. And Bart, how are you, my man? Ooh, that came out weird.
It's okay, my man, Russ. I am better than I deserve, young man.
I
Thanks
love
for having
it.
me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm jazzed for our piece because even just before we started recording and all of that, you and I were having a lot of fun. Just this is something that I think is going to speak to everyone in our audience and just of what goes into this, social gaming foundation that has laid the groundwork for out-of-home entertainment and how that then lays a framework that we can look at all of our attractions and how we operate it across any center to make sure that we're providing these extra bits that go into a really solid guest experience. So I'm very excited to dive in. And before we do that, I just want to, I mentioned Bart with Qubica and Qubica AMF, obviously a well-established in the bowling world, and give us a little bit of background of your time in the industry, even prior to joining Qubica.
Yeah, well, thanks, Russ. I'll keep the abbreviated version because I'm really old. I've been around a long time, and I want the viewers to get some good content, not just history about me. But so, in short, I have the most incredible job in the world now with Qubica AMF. I'm the director of marketing and investor success, and I get to help folks in the out-of-home entertainment space figure out their why and how to bring their vision to life. And it's an incredible opportunity to do something that I love. Before joining the team here, I spent the last 14 years with the trade association that represents the bowling industry. There are about 4,500 businesses in America today that have bowling as part of their entertainment offerings, whether that's a secondary attraction, primary attraction, sport, whatever that may be. And that association represented over 3,400 of those units. And I spent 14 years with them in education, training, marketing. Really, kind of our mission there was to help enrich people personally and professionally. And that was a great run doing that. And previous to that, I spent 25 years plus operating out-of-home entertainment locations, primarily bowling-based, here in the States and actually around the world. I tell folks I have an international MBA, never spent a day in the classroom, but I ran 6 out-of-home entertainment centers in mainland China and negotiated with the communist government, also, which is in itself its own story, but did operations in Germany, Austria, Japan, and Australia. So very blessed and fortunate to spend and meet a lot of incredible people around the world in this thing we call out-of-home entertainment.
I love it, man. Well, you've got your 10,000 hours and then some in across multiple avenues. So we're excited to take advantage of what you've learned. And I will also say, I just love that you bring that experience as a great partner, as with Amusement 360 and just bringing that curiosity and that fire. So let's jump in. What can we learn from social gaming, and how has that laid some of this fundamental groundwork for what we do in out-of-home entertainment?
Yeah, Russ, that is a great question. I think really to answer that, we have to take a moment and take a step back, right?
Yeah.
To understand some of the societal trends that we're in the midst of now and how we got here, right? And I almost hate going back and talking about the pandemic because often we want to forget about that and move forward. But I think it's important, and not to use it from a political standpoint, but just what did we learn as a society as it relates to societal trends? And I'll just share with you quickly that, look, in this last century, there have been watershed moments that societies have went through. The Great Depression, World War II, the Great Recession, and then now the pandemic. In each of those cases, in those watershed moments for society, there have been trends that have evolved out of that. So if we take a look at the pandemic and think about what are the trends that the pandemic really accelerated, I take it as an accelerator, right? And so think about something that has really nothing to do with our space, just as a quick example for your viewers today. Think about food delivery. And think about 2018, 2019, Russ. What were the one thing that you and I could get delivered in food? It was all centered around one thing. Pizza, right? I mean, it was all pizza. That's what got delivered. And then remember the big three, they were getting really crazy and they were going to do things with like wings and they were going to try sandwiches and how do we get them there fresh and how do you do that? So the trend was already emerging, albeit slow. Fast forward to today, what can you and I get delivered in the food category?
All of it.
Everything. Fine dining, a filet mignon, sushi, everything, right? So the pandemic took that trend that was already in motion, accelerated exponentially, that people have had to wrap their arms around as business operators. What do we do? One other quick example, and then we'll get into things that you and I care about. Remote working.
Yeah.
If you think about 2018, 2019, even before that, we had this term called telecommuting. In early 2000, I was telecommuting. I had an office in Atlanta and worked in, as I mentioned, in Hong Kong and then in Germany, but I telecommuted. It wasn't as common, but it was happening. Now, fast forward, again, the pandemic accelerating trends are already in motion. Think about how the world has changed for you and I and all the folks around us in the world of work as it relates to remote working, right? It's everywhere. So there are three things specifically that I would mention to your audience today that I think are very important that help us shape the societal trends. Then we can jump into what does that mean in the spaces, what is social gaming and what does that mean?
Love it.
One of the big ones is online reservations. Again, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. If I was working with you at Amusement 360 and speaking to a group of operators in 2017 and 2018, I would have encouraged them to have online reservations. I would have told them they were cutting edge. They had, at a minimum, had to capture data and respond to the guests quickly to not lose that sale. Fast forward to today, it's not a choice. You have to have an online reservation booking element, whether you are one location in a small rural community or you are a multi-million-dollar, multi-chain organization. Online reservations, you and I, in this post-pandemic world, we expect that when we go out with friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
We also, it turns out that, whoever had the lady that had the song Material Girl, Madonna, turns out she was wrong. That we now actually value experiences over material things. Now, when she wrote that song long ago, we were trying to keep up with the Joneses, and it was about material things and having the nicest cars and the nicest houses and all the latest of things. And not that there's not still people that don't enjoy that, but we are a society today, because of all the negative things and all the things that brought us together through the pandemic, we value experiences over material products. Or material products or purchases. Mm-hmm. Now, that is music to my ears, and it should be to everyone's ears listening today, because that means that you and I will never work ourselves out of a job. That's right. The beautiful part. And then the last piece of it is, I think, is, we use a term in our space called IRL, in real life experiences. And we've gotten to a point where we prefer IRL social experiences versus things at home. Doesn't mean there's not still a market for that. Pre-pandemic, we were worried about this term called cocooning. And would people ever leave their parents' basement where they play video games for the rest of their life and never move out of the home, right? But now we've come to find out that we need those IRL, those in real life experiences. And there's a lot of data, there's a lot of great research out there when you talk about, social embeddedness and need for belonging. And there's some great studies that validates all of this. But I just share with you that all those factors wrapped into this unfortunate thing that we lived through called the pandemic has brought these trends that, for those of us that embrace them, understand them, and then can roll them into our business model, man, the sky is the limit. It's just an incredible time to be in our space.
I totally agree with you. And it's interesting because Danny and I have talked about this on a couple of other episodes of this, the need to be able to take reservations online. It does several things. One, it removes friction for the customer, just because the expectation where we've gotten to this point of like, oh, okay, I want to prime this pump before I even get to doing the thing that I want to do. I want to, have that convenience and know what I'm getting prior to the group even showing up. And so when I talk with different operators and things, what I give them now in hindsight of, hey, remember 10 or 15 years ago when we were all up in arms of, should we be doing, coins or tokens, and should we be doing tickets, or should we move over to the digital, redemption card kind of platform? The guest satisfaction, the increased revenue that it drives for the operators, like, it's a win across the board. And when I talk to folks again of the online side, hey, you're going to get people where they're booking these lanes. If you want, like, we just did this. My wife and I and our son Rinker went and bowled, and a week prior to when we were going to go, we reserved our lane online. It helped Pinhead's local bowling alley be able to anticipate, like, hey, what's our volume going to be during these times? Do we need to flex in some extra people? Do we need to flex out some, it helps you manage labor costs and also have the right amount of labor there depending on how busy you think you're going to be. And so that in and of itself is a huge one. And then to your point as well, in kind of changing shifts in behavior and everything else, like now the next phase of that also is, hey, are you able to order your food and beverage? And bowling's always done this where, hey, if I want to be out, well, not always, but of late they've been the leader in the industry of, if I want to be able to order some food to my lanes and be able to do that without having to get up and find someone and do all of that. Like we have in a post-pandemic society, whether it was through everybody, quadrupling down on Amazon.com orders, but we're just used to being able to do that, and it's shaped so much of that behavior. Another interesting question too that you had posited in some of our pre-planning was understanding this new meaning of family time and how that also can impact some of the social gaming. And so is that a little bit more of what you were talking about of, hey, we're seeing not only are we seeing some of this cocooning getting fought because we're valuing these in real life pieces, but there's a variety of things of just now, okay, if we're going to go out and we're going to do something as a core family unit, we also want to make sure that that's something that entire family unit can do together, and it's shaping what activities and that they want to do inherently together, which is shaking up some trends just in what folks are putting into their concept to begin with.
It's a great question, and we'll do a little social experiment with you and I, because I've got a few more sunsets on you, and so I'm from a different generation of parenting, and you now are enjoying the gift of parenting there. Yeah. But what the data shows is, and let me back up just a second. Whenever you generalize and stereotype, there's always a risk, right? Because there's always someone that says, "Well, that's not me, Russ. That's not me, Bart," and we understand that. But there is some validity for you and I as operators to understand that those trends and stereotypes are things that we can understand. They're directional, right? And they're directional in nature, and they're helpful. So if you think about Gen X parents, and I'm on the edge of a Gen X parent, right? Not that it's right or wrong, but this is the general consensus of a Gen X parent. We often let children rule when it comes to the choice of the family leisure time, right? We want to do everything for our kids, and there's nothing right or wrong with that. So it was all about, we would tolerate Chuck E. Cheese, and I forgive anyone that's listening that might, but no grown adult wakes up in the morning and says, "I'm really excited about going to Chuck E. Cheese today." Right? But you tolerated that for your kids because you love them and you wanted to have that experience. And the experience was, we let the children rule on those choices for family. Fast forward to today, those Gen Y millennial parents, what we see is they don't want to relinquish control or give up their own personal pursuits in favor of the children's. They want to spend time with their kids, but it's no longer about kid-specific activities. And that's where, when you start thinking about your business model and what activities you want to have as a part of that, are you going to look at something that's kid-centric or adult-centric that still appeals to the kids? And I think your example of taking the family bowling and understanding that there were games and laser tag and other amenities that you could do, the Gen Y parents, millennial parents, we might think it's good or bad. The fact of the matter is, they don't want to relinquish that control anymore. They want to do things that are fun for them. In fact, societally, many parents in this group find it okay to consume alcohol around their children. Mm-hmm. There was a time with some Gen X parents that consuming alcohol around children wasn't a thing that they did, right? Because you were, doing things for the children, and it was their enjoyment and their pleasure. And you as a Gen X parent received pleasure. I received pleasure as a Gen X parent based off of the joy of my children. Mm-hmm. And that was exclusively it, right? I didn't come back from Chuck E. Cheese and said, "That was amazing. What a great experience." What I said was, "My kids had a great time. Honey, I need a drink." Yeah. There's nothing wrong with Chuck E. Cheese. They're a wonderful organization. I'm just telling you But
they've even made those adjustments where it's, hey, we need to have more amenities for the parents, knowing that, hey, like if the parents are going to come here and we predominantly had things for the kids, like we need to also flex some things up to whether it's in the arcade selection or some of the secondary elements that are part of that. And I also agree with you, because I think that ties into the in real life experiences too of, Okay, mini golf's been around for 120 years.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing with something like that, an attraction like that, is it's growing and evolving, where even like blacklight indoor mini golf, it's now, okay, if I'm a center and I'm looking at putting in traditional blacklight themed mini golf with like the, jungle safari cruise kind of vibe to it, versus something that's going to skew a little bit more adult leaning but still be fun for the kids to play. Like, kids are going to have fun with mini golf in either one of those camps. But now, by maybe aging up the demographic alignment or the primary demographic that we're targeting, where it's still super fun for the parents, or facilitating ways for them to be able to eat and drink while they're playing through that course, like, all of these things start to come into just how we look at something like mini golf and the layout and the design and the aesthetics of it.
Absolutely.
Because there may be a time where I want mom and dad, when they're there playing that experience, to not only think of it as this is something to do with my kids, but maybe there's a group outing, with the neighborhood friends that we want to do, right? Or if we want to have some of those different things to keep it relevant to them beyond just going with their kids. And that broadens demographics, it broadens audience, it broadens repeat play. Like, we're seeing such a shift in all of that, where now I kind of call it that Nerf mentality, where, hey, you may, unless you have a very specific business model and you know that you are targeting, like, birthday parties are going to be 80% of our thing and yada yada. But if we want a place where parents are going to feel comfortable to increase their dwell time, we know we need to step up the food and beverage. We know that we need to have the aesthetics not be just kiddie carousel kind of stuff, and that it's do what Starbucks did, where let it feel like an extension of a place that they would want to hang out with by themselves. And then the kids are going to have a ton of fun regardless with the activities.
Yeah. I mean, you just validated everything that was perfectly said. So the data shows, if you just put it in like a statistical number, like you and your wife, 60% of millennial parents say that when they're thinking about something to do, it's not just about the kids, for all the reasons you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
40% of millennial dads said they don't have a problem taking their kids to the bar, right? Yeah. And that is, for somebody that's like me, is a little older. I find that, I mean, for me, that would have been considered like bad parenting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How dare you take your child to a bar, right? And kind of a thing. But again, not that one is good or bad. And we might decide that we have our own personal beliefs. That's not what this is about. This is about you as an operator. How are you going to make the best decision for your community, for the best business model, to be able to have the most productive, impactful business for your community and your family and your ownership group. So, those parental, those trends are, like them or not, it's important to know what they are and how they fit into the decisions you're making.
Absolutely. Well, and that's, what I called kind of dealing with reality on reality's terms, blended with this idea of you may not always be your, kind of target client or guest that's coming through. And so looking at kind of the macro of where is this stuff going, so we can just continue to stay relevant and be a place that everyone is excited to come and do. And it reminds me of, I did a site visit to one of Barry Zellickson's older locations before he had sold it and moved on and some things. And it was a huge deal. They were talking about how much of a change it was when they were adding beer and wine just into the mix, because they had a predominant number of their attractions focused on a younger demographic, but they wanted to have something for the parents. And now we've seen, like, parents, as they've grown up doing so many of these things. Like, I mean, I grew up being a laser tag marshal and a birthday party host. So I've spent plenty of time in a family entertainment environment as both, an employee, but also a younger kid. But now I feel like I can go there and still have things for me. Like, that's a relevant thing that I still want to have be part of our fun and our mix. Sure. And so, yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense that kind of comes with that, and how the perception of what that family time is. It needs to be something that everybody's going to get something out of. And especially in times where, hey, if disposable income and the household budget is a little bit tighter and we're going to go do something, that we can all do together. And moms are much more curating, hey, like, this is the attraction bundle or package that we're going to do while we're here, because I know that it's 80% of those things we're going to be able to do all together. And I'm going to get my emotional love language filled with not only seeing my kids have a good time, but I'm not, checking my watch because it's not something that's relevant to me. Like, we need to have that there for them.
You and your wife want to have an enjoyable experience with your children, not provide one for them.
Yeah. I
mean, that's
absolutely.
Love
it.
And really, Russ, what's happened is all of those things I've mentioned, when you curate all those together, it's given us this term that you initially, mentioned that has become really important for folks, I think, to understand, and that is the term of social gaming, right? Is something a social gaming attraction? Now, sometimes people get that confused with social, competitive, which is an oxymoron, right? Because I don't know how something can be social and competitive. Not that each one can be good, but together it's just, it's not, I mean, it's just, it doesn't work.
We're going to get along and love each other, but I'm also going to talk shit.
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, so social competition is not what I'm talking about. It's about social gaming. And for me, there are 7 factors, I think, if you're looking at attractions or thinking about your business model, the 7 things that I think make up attraction that fits the profile for social gaming, in my space and just based on the research I've done, is this, and I'll share them with you and the listeners here quickly, is one, does it have a high repeat appeal? Is it repetitive, right? Is it something that is a participatory activity? Or am I watching? Am I a bystander, right? So am I participate in it? Technology, is it technology enhanced? Because we live in this techno world where technology is evolving. Is it played by a small group of people, right? Is it something I can do with a small group? Or, football, for example, I need 11 people to be able to play football. I need another 11 on the other side. So it can be played by a small group of folks. Is there any level of experience necessary? A good social gaming activity has limited or no experience. And then while I was bashing on the competition, I will say that one of the important factors is lighthearted competition that's not taken seriously, right? And then the most important one, the one that really has been the one that's been a game changer in making what I call kind of the premium social gaming attraction. It's played simultaneously while enjoying high quality food and beverages. One person plays while the other group members watch, talk among themselves, socialize, engage in social media, eat and drink. That has been the secret sauce that has made, because it increases dwell time, increases check average. It checks all the boxes on why it's such a profitable attraction. So if you think about those 7 things, is it repeatable? Is it participatory? Is there technology involved? Do I need a lot of people, or can I do it as a small group? Do I have to have any experience? Is there any lighthearted competition, but it's not taken with any degree of seriously? And then can I do it simultaneously while enjoying high quality food and beverage, where I understand that we live in a social environment, and social media plays such a big part of the overall, experience there. And when you think about activities and you can go down those 7 checklists and check a lot of boxes, you are in the midst of a very, very powerful activity that, really can be very, very profitable for you.
So, and I love absolutely every bit of that. And it helps me expand kind of this filter that Danny and I have always focused on of like, is it social? Is it story driven? And is it immersive? And I think that this helps even broaden that checklist and that opportunity, because if you can have something that hits on all 7 of those, like off the top of my head, I'm like, oh shit, Topgolf now makes total sense because it's checking all of those. And really, while that was happening, we were looking at like, okay, well, bowling's done this for forever. We're like, okay, people can come, they can play again. You don't have to be good at it to enjoy it. There's always some new tech and fun that's getting infused into it. It's got the food and beverage. Yes, it's that small group inherently, that's there, and that lighthearted competition that goes with it. Because in the early days of Topgolf exploding, we were like, well, they've essentially created a driving range out of the bowling model, and that's why it translated. But because it took what bowling had done, which also inherently lends itself so much to those 7, that makes a ton of sense as to why that's there, or why something like mini golf is going through this huge boom right now, because it's been around for forever, but now you do have more technology that's able to get infused into it and be additive, not just there for the sake of the, having some bells and whistles going off, but it's that small group. They can compete. There's some luck and some chance factors as well as skill, like that easy to learn, hard to master kind of a thing where you don't, because that's the piece for me. Like even with online video games, right? Like I go on there and I get my butt kicked by, some 12-year-old in Germany who's talking trash to me. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm just going to play the story mode because this is not my bag. And so having those things that come with it, and not every attraction will have all of these obviously, but I think to your point, hey, if we can get 5 of these 7, whoa, okay, well, like we're cooking with gas now. And then, even beyond that, because like certain things like go-karting, are you going to be able to eat and drink while you do that? No, but you still have, something that's really dynamic and different. And once we're done with the experience, if it's not right there within the core activity, are we creating, as part of the guest experience, an opportunity for them to look at, okay, what were the race results, or who was the leaderboard on the laser tag experience, and have then you can go and immediately get a little bit of a food and beverage piece either before or after you actually do the activity.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Russ. Not every activity or amenity that you have in your facility has to be a pure social gaming activity.
Right.
Right. I mean, to your point, there are some things like the go-kart's a great example that are a great experience. But if you look at the successful brands, they have a core activity that checks these boxes on the social gaming.
Yes.
And I think, Topgolf is a great testimonial, right? If you think about the golf industry, they were struggling for many years in participation. And, Topgolf and the golf industry, figured a way to reinvent themselves. You have the bays, and you think about the social, they call them social bays, right?
Yeah.
And that there's food and beverage, and, there's the activity in small groups. So it checks a lot of those boxes. And the numbers show that they've increased the participation there. Of course, I'm passionate about bowling, and I think that, for me, I grew up in this industry and spent my lifetime in it. And I knew it was incredible, but it took me a long time to figure out why. It wasn't until I could understand the data on why why is bowling the OG of social gaming, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't anything that we did. It was just the fact that it has no barriers to entry. It goes from 3 to 103. It's, there's no correlation between your skill and ability and the activity. I love the example of, and I enjoy golf. I live on a golf course now. I'm terrible at it, but I don't shank one off in the woods and high five my buddy. Right. No one gets excited about that. I can be bowling with friends, and if I happen to dump one in the gutter and I'm having a good time, we come back and high five and have a drink and enjoy some more appies and having a great time.
Well,
so
and that's that lighthearted competition, right? Because and Topgolf does that as well. Like, okay, if I duff it, right, and I don't have a great shot, they put some close targets up in there so that way you can get a little bit of a consolation prize. And I think that, even to your point on bowling being the OG for this, is that it also has so much of the, I don't know, it is so inherent of how that's evolved. But we've also seen things recently like, ooh, okay, is league bowling going down? Well, in some markets, yes, and in others, it's alive and well. But you start to see things like recreation leagues and other non-traditional league programming going around something like bowling, because it has all of those opportunities. And it's still something like, it's still the number one birthday party, kind of activity that's out there when you look at the IAPA benchmark surveys and all of that kind of stuff.
And the Sporting Good Manufacturers Association does independent research, and I think it's a great example because it shows some of the gains that golf has made. Bowling is America's largest participation sport, and that's not industry talk. That's third-party verification. 50.3 million people bowled last year. The second greatest after that was basketball at 31.9 million. And then you got golf and tennis and soccer and pickleball and all the others come underneath it. Golf had 28 million people that played traditional golf last year. And so with the advent of what they call the off course in the Topgolf and the other brands that are bringing this golfing experience and making it, social gaming, last year they were up to 47.2 million.
Yeah.
Still less than bowling, but they made a substantial gain in the participation, and it's forever changed the dynamics of that. And other brands are trying to figure it out. I mean, pickleball is a great activity, but they're still trying to figure out how do we work in the F&B element with that and monetize it and the dwell time. And, it's a great product, but understanding how it fits in that. So I find it fascinating that the trends have set up where if you can understand what makes something a good social gaming activity, what it could mean for your business there.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Now, obviously, we've hit a lot on, hey, these are some attractions that just inherently have done this, and it's why they've stayed successful for the better, over a century. Are there, when we look at certain things, and we kind of mentioned it a little bit, something like go-karting or laser tag, right? Where, hey, you've got a decent chunk of those, but there are times where, okay, where and how can we identify if we have laser tag, right? It has that ability where, yep, anybody can jump in there and play it, and you can adjust the game type and what the rules of the game are and things like that to make it easier and more accessible for folks. But if it's not a part of the inherent activity itself, where are we putting it in our facility then, for like the food and beverage enjoyment and the kind of debriefing side? Yeah. Like, are we putting that near our restaurant area or mini golf? Are we putting that near the restaurant area or allowing them to have some of those things in there? So it may be that you have an activity that you're super excited about, or why we even see, hey, the arcade footprint's actually growing and we're putting more cocktail rounds and things throughout that space in order for them to be able to, walk and go. So Andretti's is a great example where they've literally increased the size of their arcades by about 20%, and they haven't added more units within that arcade. They wanted more spectator room for people to be able to watch each other play the games and then start to compete and do some of that. And so even if the exact, X's and O's of that activity don't have it, you can still bring in some amenities to then further and by extension help make it more, check more of those boxes, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's a great assessment. There are brands that are testing things, right? So like Dave & Buster's and some other brands are testing dart bays because people are experimenting with darts and social, where you can rent a dart bay, and again, the social gaming. They're testing shuffleboard bays where you can do things with shuffleboard and things. So, and you mentioned mini golf, putt shack and putt stroke, and groups are trying to figure out, how do I incorporate that? And to your point, as you mentioned, knowledge is power, right? If you know what the factors are that make up social gaming, you can then figure out, if I can't get there with the activity I'm passionate about, then how do I try to supplement some of that? And you laid out some great examples there. So just knowing what it takes to appeal to the social, societal trends we have today in that social gaming gives you the knowledge to be able to say, as a team, what do we want to plan for? What do we want to do? And how do we change our business model or our guest experience to help kind of offset some of those things?
I love it.
It's amazing. I love, events like you have, and the Amusement 360 and others are great. And I notoriously will visit with some passionate, fired up people. It just happened when I was with you a couple of months ago. Beautiful people. But they're, when I talk to them and start to learn about their why and what they want to do, they, Bart, I don't want to get in the food business. I'm not going to do food. That's not what we're doing. I'm going to do the most awesome laser tag ever. I'm going to do the best mini golf ever. I'm going to do the most incredible duck pin bowling ever. And, but I'm not going to do food. I'm not in the restaurant business. And then you kind of have that painful coming to Jesus conversation. You're in the food business, whether you want to be or not.
Right. Take a look at some of these big brands, and when you look at the side of their building with the signage and it says eat, play, bowl, but they're a bowling alley, like, hey, know that this is a big factor that's going to move the needle for you for sure.
And you can choose not to be in the food business, but you're still in the food business. The share of wallet will decide whether they're going to eat before they come see you or after they come see you. And either way, it's going to impact your share of wallet and your check average.
Absolutely.
So you're in the food business, whether you choose to be or not. Just like we're all in social media, whether we choose to be active in it or not. The world's happening. It's evolving around us.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. And you had mentioned being at 360 and us having some of those conversations. And I just want to thank you so much. And also let folks know, hey, at the time that we're recording the podcast here, our next Amusement 360 will be September 16th through the 18th here in Indianapolis. And so you'll get to come and chat with Bart and I, and we'll nerd out with you and lean into the why and be so excited to share and develop kind of what your vision is. But it's one of those things that every time we come away from that event, you'll talk to somebody and they'll say, ooh, we thought we knew exactly what we wanted to have, but now that we've had a chance to pick the brains of other operators and folks like yourself, the industry experts, now I've got to rethink some things to make sure that I'm changing the game plan to factor these in. So really looking forward to that next event coming up with you. And go ahead.
Yeah. And I would just say that, I'm sorry, just with this event, because this is such a great event, is that I love the people that come there that they don't know what they don't know, right? So they're learning from the experts, just like you said. But for us as folks that have spent a lifetime in this industry, they fill us with passion because they're just passionate about what they want to do. I mean, this gentleman that didn't want to do food was so passionate about what he wanted to bring and wanted to talk about it and share it. And, it's the entrepreneurial spirit. It's what makes this country so great. So getting those people together, even though they may not know exactly what their full why is or what their whole business is going to look like, the fact that they're passionate feeds guys like you and me that have been doing this a while, when we get fired up and we're like, I love the passion. I mean, give me someone that's passionate and wants to learn, then that's going to be someone that has a high degree to be successful. High probability to knock it out of the park.
It's such an infectious vibe. Absolutely. Okay, so before I let you go, one thing that I always love to ask with our partner episodes is there a book or a quote or a podcast or, something, and it could be something that's helped be a good Northern Star for you throughout your entire life, or something that you've come across recently that's really just been moving the needle for you that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, Russ, I'm crazy about you and crazy about the listeners, so I'm going to give you one of each there. Plus, I'm old, so I've had a lot of North Stars over the years to try to keep me on track. So, in fact, it's sitting here on my desk here. So, I am a passionate person with Donald Miller. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. The Story Brain. I would encourage the listeners, anything Donald Miller related, I just love it. It's simple, straightforward, no nonsense. And I've read a lot of his books, and I'm really focusing on building that story brand to try to help the folks that you and I are helping there. So I love anything by Donald Miller. I don't work for Donald Miller. I'm not trying to sell his books. I'm just telling you, he's an all-star, and I love listening to his podcast and reading. But a quote that I just dearly enjoy, and especially in our space, comes from a gentleman named Adam Stanley. And Adam Stanley says, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Right. And I just think the world would be such a great place if we don't wait until you can fix the world. Just do for one what you wish you could do for everyone, and we'd all be a lot better off.
I absolutely love it. Couldn't agree more. And I'm so excited. I'm all jazzed up here, man. You got me fired up. So I appreciate your gusto and your zest. With that, I think that's a wonderful place for us to wrap up. Thank you for the recommendation and wholeheartedly endorse Donald Miller as well. He's one of those cats that sees the Matrix. With that, we've got more amazing content coming your guys' way as you're listening to this episode. Check out the links if you want to check out some future or previous episodes, as well as the upcoming ones that will be hitting up. If you liked what you heard today, please give us that 5-star review. We appreciate it as long as we've earned it. And if you have any ideas for future episodes, please hit us up on social media. We'd love to add it into the mix as we're bringing that stuff together. And big shout out, as always, to Mikey Mike on the ones and twos, working the Ultranet for us. And Bart, thank you again so much. And to all of you watching and listening, thank you. And we'll catch you on the next one, Troublemakers.